Good morning, dear students. From today onwards, we are going to begin the classes, and I am going to discuss about the first year syllabus. The chapter name is Problem Solving Technique, and here we see the three programming constructs. First one is sequence, second one is selection, the third one is iteration. So in sequence, the control flow is one after the other, from top to bottom, one statement after another statement. In selection, the control selects and it flows accordingly, whether to the true part or to the false part. Likewise, in the iterative statements or the iteration construct, we see there are three looping constructs, and it goes for repetition, repeating a block of statements or a single statement. So, just to re-emphasize on the first year syllabus, we need connectivity towards the second year syllabus. So we go on with the basic programming constructs to begin with, and later on we are going to discuss on the other chapters as we move on with the future days. So dear students, in this problem solving technique, we see the three basic programming constructs. First is the sequence, selection, and iteration, as I said. In the sequence, the control flow of a program will be one line after the other. There is no skipping, there is no jumping of the control. The control flow is in a sequential order. That's the reason the same name we have given as sequence. In pertaining to selection, when we see, the selection has got two categories. One is the switch construct and the if clause. So for example, for selection, I write if clause, and then for the second category of selection will be the switch clause. So in selection, the two categories are if clause and switch clause. Further, this if clause is categorized into four types: simple if else, nested if, and then the last one is we call as else if ladder. Already we have seen all this in the first year, so I'm just re-emphasizing on what we learned in the previous year. So the three constructs we see now: sequence, selection, iteration. And sequence, as I said, it is the flow of control one after the other from top to bottom, because in a book when you take, you read line by line from top to bottom. The same sequence, the control too flows from top to bottom, and it executes all the statements in a program where there is no selection and iteration. Pertaining to only sequence I am speaking. Now, when we talk about selection, there are two clauses are there: if clause and switch clause. Further, this if clause is of four types: simple if else, nested if, and else if ladder. Likewise, when we see the switch clause, it is called as a decision making clause or a decision making construct. So, out of all the three, when we have all the three, we can construct a program. So when we construct a program, we will be requiring all the three or any one of its kind, and we are going to execute the program. Once again, to say about this problem solving technique, method, or the chapter, this is independent of a programming language. We have many programming languages: C, C++, Java, many are there. But here, this chapter is a general one, where it is something like, when you have a language, you have to follow these whatever the basic rules or the techniques to construct a program. Likewise, when you construct a program, it will be easy for us to understand, to debug. We have seen the different stages of problem solving technique: problem definition, problem analysis, design of a solution. There are two tools we use: flowchart and algorithm. Likewise, we have the coding part, then we test the coding, and then we do the maintenance part. So documentation is done. We have all the stages of problem solving technique. Likewise, those whatever the different stages we follow in a sequence for executing a program. So when we execute a program may be fully with sequence, or it will be with a mixture of sequence, selection and iteration. So we have seen about sequence, we have seen about selection. I'm going to explain you in detail about all this and how we are going to use all these selection constructs in the program. So we know in our syllabus we have C++. Based on C++ only we are going to discuss about all these three. Pertaining to this iteration we have three loops. That is, first one is your while loop, while, and then do while, and then for. There are three looping constructs are there. So in this iteration constructs, we know we have seen the two names or the two methods. One is known number of times of repetition and unknown number of times of repetition. So here the two I take here, while and do while, for unknown number of times of repetition, and for known number of times of repetition. Dear students, please do take down this, because I'm going to ask you a few questions and you are going to answer those questions. So take down this. These three will be using as the basic foundation to construct a program, because we know where a program starts and program ends. Now, I'll take an example for a sequence construct. So in sequence, the sequence, when we would like to explain according to C++, I have given you an example program based for sequence. So here, this is the preprocessor directives. As we have seen the syntax of C++, I'm going to discuss about the syntax once again. So preprocessor directives, and then void main, open a flower bracket, we got the declarations here, and then clear screen, input statement, output statement, then you got your processing part, then you got your output part. So here the cout takes a number and then two numbers, enter two numbers you're going to give. It's going to a simple program for addition, and it is going to add two numbers. C will be storing the result, and then the sum is C. This is how the sequence, an example for sequence construct. When the control flows in sequence, it goes in order. As I said, from top to bottom, we read the books or we read the notes in the book, what we write, okay, from top to bottom. Likewise, the control also flows from top order to the bottom. That is, from top to bottom. When it goes line by line, statement by statement, it goes in a sequence. So that's the reason this example we can relate to sequence construct. That is, int a comma b comma c, CLR SCR, it goes on till get ch, then it ends the program. There is no skipping or there is no jumping of the control. Likewise, when we look at the second category of the construct, that is sequence, first is sequence, second one is selection. I said there are two constructs are there, two subconstructs are there. That is the if clause and the switch. So let us take an example for the if clause. In if clause there are four categories are there. We are going to take the examples of all the four categories. Then we come to the second part of the selection construct, that is the switch clause. In selection, the two categories are if clause and switch clause. Under if, we have the four clauses here: simple if else, nested if, and else if ladder. I have written a program here pertaining to C++, because since in our syllabus C++ is added, we need to go through the C++ references or the examples. So here when I take the simple if, this program is connected to the simple if. When you look at this program, we have the header files here, then void main. I got one variable, that is n. The program tells us whether a given number is positive. I'm not going to take the else part here, because if you take else part, you need to show in the example for the second if else. So since simple if do not have else, I have taken only the conditional construct here, conditional one, and then I got the cout statement. So let us look into the program. When n is taken a value, enter a number, you are going to enter a number, n is going to take a value. When n is going to take a value, it is going to compare here. It is going to check in this conditional construct, that is n greater than 0. If n has got a value, for example, n equals 2, 2 is greater than 0, then given number is positive. We are not going to say about the negative part, only the positive. We want only whether a number is positive or not. So on that basis, we have taken an example for simple if. Now we move on to the if else. We saw simple if having an example of entering a number, taking a number, but without an else. But here the second category deals with if else. That is, if the condition is true, it will come to true part, else the false part. I am going to give a comparison of simple if and if else again. Simple if do not have the false part or the else part. If the condition is true, it will go only for the true part, and then it will come out of the construct, and it goes executing all the other statements in a sequential order from once it comes out. In the case of if else, we have the true part and the false part. Once the condition is true, it will enter the true part, it will never go to the false part. If the condition is false, it goes to the else part. It doesn't enter the true part. I reiterate again. In simple if, we don't have else. In if else construct, we have else. In simple if, we have only the true part. That is, if the condition is true, it is going to enter and it is going to come out. There is no else part of it. Otherwise, that's how we call. If it is true, it enters. If it is false, we don't have any condition. That is the previous example which I gave. But here in this case of the second category of if clause, we have if else. If the condition is true, it enters inside, there is a statement for us, and there should be a statement for us to execute. If true, it's going to execute the true part. We call this as the true part. That is, the true part will be before the else. And if the condition becomes false, it doesn't enter in the true part. Rather, it comes to the else part and executes. So this is the two categories of if clauses which I have explained to you. One is the simple if else. Simple if doesn't have else. If else has got else. True part and the false part. When we look at the nested if, the nested if meaning is nest or inside. That is, one if inside another if. I repeat again. The nested if meaning is one if inside another if. And the third category of, or the third clause of if, when you see, I have given an example here. So preprocessor directives are there, then we have the void main, three variables I have taken. This program is about to find the greatest of three numbers. So three variables are there with us, A, B and C. Enter three numbers. A is going to take a value, A, B, C, then it is going to check the condition. When you look at this coding, if A greater than B, then if it is true, it enters into the true part. As I said before, in the if else, the two parts are there. One is the true part and the false part. If the condition is true, it enters the true part. If the condition is false, it doesn't enter the true part. Rather, it goes to the else part, or we call as otherwise. So once again, I re-emphasize, whenever we work on if clause or nested if, simple if, only one statement it is going to execute, either in the true part or in the false part. So let us focus it properly. In nested if, one if inside another if, said so. Now the question arises, which if is inside? That is, if A greater than C, if you could see this, if A greater than C, this is the construct which is inside if A greater than B. If A greater than B is true, it enters inside. When it enters inside, it is going to check one more if clause. If A greater than C is true, then C out A is greater, it is going to display. If you check properly, endl is not there. That is, I have written without an endl saying that out of all these statements, only one statement is going to execute. That is, out of these three, who is greater? A, whether A or B or C. So now, enter the three numbers is going to take, and then if A greater than B is true, then it is going to check one more, because there is the three variables and the computation between three variables. The computation is within the three variables. If A is greater than B, it needs to check with C. Then it enters inside. Now let us focus by taking a value. Let us take A equals 10, B equals 5, C equals 8. Now, A has got a value 10. Is it greater than 5? Is 10 greater than 5? True. It enters inside. Now, 10 is greater than 8 because C's value is 8. True. Then it enters inside. When it goes inside, now we could see this part is the nested if. C out, A is greater. Once again to re-emphasize, A greater than B, A's value is 10. So it's like a question, is it 10 greater than 5? Then it enters inside to check with the third value, that is C's value. So A's value is checking with C. 10 greater than 8. Now 10 is obviously greater than 8. It enters. C out, A is greater. Now, once it enters, there is an else part. Definitely, once a control enters a true part, it will not go to the else part. We know that. So it needs to go the true part. Once true part is there, it needs to come out. If you see the sequence of it, this part is the true part of if clause. That is, if A greater than B. For this if, there is one else. So always, when there is else, there should be if. We know that rule. Now this else always belongs to the previous if. When I say previous if, we have one more if is there. We need to understand it properly. When I say one else belongs to previous if, already there is an else here, a nested else, which is belonging to the nested if. Likewise, if this first statement is false, we want a else part. So when the condition is false, it comes to the else part of if A greater than B. Now let us focus it properly. If A greater than B is false, that means A is not greater, then we go with B and C. That's the reason in the else part of the first if construct, we have B greater than C. So this else belongs to the first if. The second else, whatever is there, is a nested if. Once again, I am reiterating. This is the nested if. This else belongs to this nested if. In this else, that is the first if, outer if is there. For that else, we have got B greater than C. Let us take a different value now. Let us make B as 15. Now, A is 10, B is 15. If 10, is it greater than 15? So the condition becomes false. When the condition becomes false, it directly goes to the else part of this if. So I've written it properly here. So else if B is 15, greater than 8. So we retain the value as it is, only the value B we are going to change. So B 15 greater than 8. When the control comes here, B is obviously greater than C. So let us go back again. If A's value is what? 10, B's value is 15, C's value is 8. So the control enters from top to bottom. A greater than B, 10 greater than 15 is false. It comes to the else part. There B is checked with C. So we have got three variables. A is not greater than B. Then B is checked with C. B is greater than C. 15 greater than 8. Now it is true. Since it is true, it goes to B is greater. As I said, once it enters the true part, it comes out after executing the true part. A control will never go to the true part as well as the false part. It has to go to the true part. That's how the if clause. That is the topic we are discussing about selection. We need to select anyone. So this is the example for the nested if. Let us take C being greater. Now A equals 10, B equals 15, C equals 18. Enter three numbers. So let us take these three as the value now. If 10, that is A's value 10, greater than 15, true or false? False. So the condition becomes false, it comes to the else part. Now B's value is 15. We have taken for our example now C as greater, so we'll take C as 18. B 15 greater than 18 becomes false. Then there is an else for this if, then the control comes to the else part. Here it says C out, C is greater. So finally, we are going to get out of all these three, any one will be greater. And any one statement is going to execute. So to re-emphasize again, three numbers are there. We are going to take three numbers here. If condition is true, then it goes to the true part. In the true part, we have got the nested if. That is the example for us to be discussed. And then if the condition is false, it goes to the else part of it. So the control goes to else part and it is going to execute whichever is true. Now this is the example what we have set for nested if. Please do go through this class so that you will be knowing all this. So today we have discussed about the sequence construct. We have discussed about selection, but only the first three part of if clause. Next class we will be discussing about else if ladder and the second category of the selection construct, that is the switch clause. So have a good day, stay safe, stay at home, make sure that you are going to learn at home. Thank you. Dear students, I have given you a few questions here. What are the three programming constructs? Give an example for simple if and if else. The example will be pertaining to C++. And the third question is difference between simple if and if else. Below the video you find a link. There you can upload your queries or any doubts and even the questions you need to answer it by taking a pic of it and upload it in that link. Thank you. Have a great day.